Hi guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today we'll be making this very cute skirt. It's a pencil skirt with a vertical design at the front. So for this skirt we'll be needing just your round waist measurement, hip point, round hip and skirt length to make this. Okay, so let's go right into it. We'll be working with this very beautiful fabric. I have about 2 yards of it. Okay, working with this very beautiful fabric. I'm just trying to make the top of it equal so we can start up. Okay, now if you're new to this channel, please subscribe to the channel, like, share and comment. Your comments are highly welcome. They will be very much appreciated. So we'll get right into taking our measurements. The first thing we're going to take is the hip point. We're working with a hip point of 8. The hip point for the skirt is 8. The next thing is the skirt length. Now we'll work with a skirt length of 21, but because of hemming allowance at the edge, we're going to be using 23 for our skirt length. Okay, excluding our band. Our band is going to be 2 inches band. So while folding that, at the end of the day we'll still come back to 23 inches. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to take our horizontal measurement starting from the waist. Around waist is 30, divided by 4 we have 7.5 inches, and then 1 inch for that, then 2 inch for seam allowance. So the next we're going over to the hip. The round hip we're working with is 40 by 4 is 10 plus 2 inch for seam allowance. So just marking this out properly so it to show. So the next thing is our knee, our round knee. Remember we used our waist equivalent. We're using our waist equivalent to mark out our round knee. So that's waist equivalent plus 1 inch. The waist equivalent we got was 7.5 plus 1 inch, so we have 8.5 plus 2 inch for seam allowance. Okay, so we're just going to connect all our points together. For this part, ensure you're making use of a ruler to put to your connection so that it will turn out neat and nice, but if you can use your free hand, then you can do that, but using a ruler makes it much easier, and then gives you a clean look. Okay, so just making this more visible, we're working with a fabric that has a lot of yellow and using a yellow chalk. So the next thing is to mark out our zip allowance. We're using 1 inch for that. That's for our zip and slit. Okay, so the next is to cut out. Ensure you cut in between the lines. Ensure you're cutting in between the lines. This skirt is actually a simple skirt. It's easy to make. There's no magic about it. Just follow through the procedures and then you get everything you want accurately. Okay, next we are marking out our dart. Now to get the dart is usually nipple to nipple measurement plus half inch for stitching. Now my nipple measurement is 7 inch divided by 2 is 3.5 plus half inch for stitching, so mark that 4 inch for that. Okay, we're finished with cutting of the skirt. The next is to cut out on our lining. Okay, now lining posed a little problem. The material was just moving all about, so I had to try to keep it well. Just checking to know if it was exactly what I needed. You don't want anything to go to waste, so you have to ensure that whatever you're throwing away should be just a little. To fold, this is the front part of our skirt. Now for the front part, as you can see, I folded it. The folded edge, which is the center front, should be placed on the folded part of the lining material too. Okay, just spinning this down so it will not be moving about. Now remember, for our hemming, we're using 2 inches for hemming, so that's what I'm just doing there, folding in 2 inch to cut out our lining, because our lining will not be the same thing, will not be equal with the material. Just had to place a book on this so that it will stay. Okay, we'll go right to cutting this out. And please, when making the skirt, you can decide to use a single fabric for the vertical piece and the main skirt, or use different fabric, whatever you're comfortable with. You know, it's fashion, it's style. Just do whatever you're comfortable with and whatever you feel will look nice on you. So we're through with that. I'm just going to mark out that on the lining piece also. Okay, we're doing the same thing for that, cutting out 2 inches out for our back lining. Okay, I already had this piece, so I'm just cutting it out, no wastage. Ensure you also cut out, make a notch for the dart for both lining pieces, okay, to make it more easy. So what I'm trying to do now is to mark out the width of the vertical piece I'll be attaching to the skirt. So the idea is for it to sit in between both front darts. So we'll have a vertical piece in between both front darts. Okay, so we're going to measure that out. The distance between both front darts is 8 inches. Okay, so our vertical piece has to sit in between that, so it has to be less than that. Now remember, we've not sewn down our dart, so when we do that, it's going to be reduced. So I'm just trying to mark out what I want. Now the total length of the skirt at the end of the day, when we add our band and everything, it's going to come down to 23 inches. So the vertical piece should be longer than it. That is the idea. It should be longer than it. So we'll be working with the length for the vertical piece will be 30 inches. Now for the vertical piece, unlike the skirt, there will be no hemming allowance. We'll just use our lining, same thing. So I'm just cutting it out. Okay, and I'm going to split this into two, because after measuring I had about 12 to 13 inches, so I'm just going to share this into two. Remember I said earlier the distance between our dots is 8, and this has to sit in between the dots. Now I'm using two pieces of this. You can decide to use one or more than two. You can decide to use three. You can decide to use different fabrics for this vertical piece. Okay, so go on ahead to cut it. Now for the vertical piece, one will be longer than the other. While one is short, one is longer, so just decided to reduce that one, so that would be the shorter piece. And the next thing we're going to do is just cut out our lining. Okay, I really had a tough time with the lining piece, the lining material, because it was just moving everywhere, so I had to pin it down. So if you're working with a fabric like this one, ensure you pin it down so there'll be no mistakes. Okay, just trying to make adjustments because I wanted this to come out very well. Now if you have more of the fabric and decide to still use the fabric for your lining piece to turn it over, there's no standard procedure for this. You can decide whatever you deem fit, whatever works for you. You can decide to use the same material as your lining piece, or if you don't have that, you can use a different material like I'm doing for the lining piece. Okay, so I've gone ahead to sew one part of the back, did my dad, also did the same for the front piece. Okay, so I'll be using this piece to show how I did that. Now attaching the lining and this thing is very easy. Now we have a fabric that's very funny. The front and the back, the fabric is quite colorful. So if you're working with a fabric like mine, ensure you make mark on them. You can decide to just use your chalk to make mark on them, so you know the front part of the fabric and the back part. Now to attach the front part, to attach the fabric to the lining, what you have to do is to place your fabric and lining front parts facing each other, both front parts facing each other. Okay, I ensure you place the area that has to be on the hip area, the down part. That's why earlier I made mention of marking out the dart on the lining, so there's no mix up anywhere. You know, this is the down part, this is the waist area. Okay, so just pin it down, you sew the down. Okay, this is what it looks like after doing that. This is it, all neat, looking nice and clean, as you can see. Okay, so the next thing is our darts. Now for this, I'm just going to fold the parts where we have our notch. Okay, I'm going to fold that down, ensure both parts are equal, so you don't have one down and one up. So the dart is going to sit on a length of 5 inches. That's why I said it won't get to the hip. So 5 inches. Now remember, we took 1 inch for that allowance. So at the top part, we're going to measure out half an inch. Okay, and then from the down part, make a line from there down to meet the half inch at the top we marked. Okay, just watch what I'm doing so you'll not be confused. Okay, that's just it. So you make a stitch on top of the line down to that, and that's how you make a dart. Okay, now this is it after making it darts all clean. You'll notice in the video I was using 2 different threads. So we have our yellow and we have our sky blue color on it. So the next, I've gone ahead to attach the lining to the vertical piece and then join both of them together. So we're going to bring in our front part of the skirt. Okay, so we can attach the vertical piece to it. Now we finished making our dart, so we're going to take our measurement again. We need to know the midpoint of both darts in order to place them accurately. So we have 7 inches, and 7 inches divided by 2 is 3.5. So that's our midpoint. Okay, we bring in our vertical piece, also do the same thing, take the measurement for it and get our midpoint. We have 6 inches, so we are using 3 inch. That means 3 is the midpoint. We are placing that on the midpoint of the front part of the skirt. So that's where our vertical piece is going to sit. Okay, just going to pin this down so it doesn't move, and then make a stitch across. Okay, go back to the sewing machine and make a stitch across just like that. So this is what it looks like after making a stitch. We have our vertical piece attached to the front piece of the skirt. So the next is to take our body measurement. Now while marking out our skirts, we added extra 2 inches for the waist, the hip, and for the length of the skirts for our seam allowance. Now we've used a lot of that, so we cannot say we still have 2 inches. Okay, so the next thing is you have to make your measurements, do your body measurements. Yeah, so remember we're working with a round waist of 30, so we have an extra 3 inch, so we're going to do a 1.5 on both sides. Now for this part, ensure you take your body measurement. Okay, you can decide to might say, okay, I added 2 inches and decided to take 2 inches off, but then you might have something under the size you're working with. Okay, so just watch what I'm doing around this area properly so you know what to do. Okay, and I noticed at the end of the day what I took around from the waist down to the hip was 1.5 inch. That was what I got, and I got the accurate measurement at the end of the day. So ensure you take your measurements, okay, to get it right. We're going to do the same thing for the end of the skirt. Okay, take your measurements, know what you're working with. Okay, and at the end of the day we still had 1.5 inch, so took 1.5 inch at the end. Okay, so that means we did our stitching with half inch, with half inch. Yes, so the next thing is to connect it. Now for this part, like I said earlier in the video, ensure you use a ruler. Okay, I couldn't find my ruler, so I decided to use the freehand. Okay, see, and this is one of the reasons I said using a ruler is better, because we're having several lines while doing this. So it's better you make use of a ruler to give you accurate lines. Now you know our body doesn't have any rough edges, it's smooth. So while doing this, you have smooth lines, one line, so that while stitching down you don't stitch outside the desired measurement. Okay, so while doing this, ensure you make use of a rule. So the next thing is to attach our skirts together. I went ahead to stitch down the back piece, made use of a 1 inch we had as our zip allowance, and then the slit, I used the slit length of 6 inches. Okay, so to attach this, we put them front facing each other, and then go over to the sewing machine to stitch it down. So this is what we have after stitching it down. The next thing is to attach our band to our skirt. Okay, to attach the band, just start from the inside. Okay, as you can see, I went ahead to iron my gum stain to it to give it sort of firmness and fitting. Okay, so just going to pin this down so I can show you how it works. Yes, you sew from the back and then fold the front a little, turn over to the front, fold it a little, and then attach the zipper. And then, so this is our skirt, finished it, attached our band, went ahead to attach the zipper. This is how it looks, all nice and pretty. Ensure you try this out. Okay, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Okay, subscribe, and see you next time. Thank you for your time.